Russian President Vladimir Putin is back with his annual end-of-the-year press conference. This time he is taking direct line call in for questions. He's also going to be facing questions from the Western media for the first time since the invasion of Ukraine. Let's listen in. So that highly anticipated press conference by Russian President Vladimir Putin is expected to get underway any minute now. As we said, this is the first of its kind press conference in some ways. This is the first time that Putin will take questions from the Western media since Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February last year. Putin has also decided to take direct questions from some Russian citizens who are expected to call during this press conference. It's a much anticipated press conference. It was cancelled last year, given that there was growing international pressure on Putin following his invasion of Ukraine. But this otherwise has been a regular feature for the Russian president, an annual end of the year press conference that he has been holding for several years now. Of course, the journalists, especially those from Western media, will certainly have plenty of questions for the Russian president about his Ukraine war.
We are prepared to start in about 2 minutes. We will be taking stock of the year with President Vladimir Putin. You know that this is a blended format. I'd like to remind you of that this is a blended press conference and a hotline with the president. As for a conversation of the president with you, with the media, will be moderated by me, your humble servant, or by the president himself, as he often does. As for the conversation of the president in the hotline and him responding to the calls and appeals of the citizens will be moderated by my colleagues and friends, Yekaterina Berezovskaya and Pavel Zarubin. I'd like to ask you, when you're asking your question here, please stand up. You'll be given the mic. Please say who you are, what media you're representing, and the microphone will be held by my colleagues who are helping us out today. I'd be very thankful if you put your mobile phones on silent. Thank you. You have the floor. Thank you, Mr. Peskov. We've been receiving questions for 2 weeks straight. Indeed, they came in from all over the country, a tremendous amount of calls. All of Russia is speaking directly, honestly, and frankly. This tremendous number of calls and appeals made us, together with Yekaterina, look at thousands of pages of your questions. We looked through tons of videos. Indeed, the past 2 weeks seem to be the largest poll all over Russia. We felt not only as journalists together with Pavel, but also as sociologists. It is natural that it's impossible to answer these millions of questions, all of them. But there are common topics. What is the main topic? The main one is special military operation. Our military servicemen are writing to us. All things considered, Well, this year, right at the very stage of gathering all the questions, we engaged the National People's Front, so there is no doubt that all of the calls and appeals will be processed and will not remain unanswered. The activists of NPF are prepared to do that. However, the most relevant and interesting questions will be voiced today. Yesterday, a question came in about the salary not being paid, and salary was paid actually that very day in the evening. There are plenty of questions that are yet unsolved, and the thing is that we're living in a world that's completely different, and people are worried not only about social matters. It is now, before the new year, it's time to take stock of the year. December is traditionally filled with many events. Last week, Mr. President, you've announced your decision to run for president. In this, against this background, what kind of attacks do you have abroad and domestically? What are the main questions for you? Well, I spoke about that many times, but it bears repeating now. For such a country as Russia, the very existence of our country without sovereignty is impossible. It will simply not exist, at least in the state that it exists now and existed for thousands of years. So the main thing is to strengthen the sovereignty. However, it's a very broad term. External sovereignty, that means strengthening our military power and security and safety on our borders. Strengthening our social sovereignty, public sovereignty. That means absolute observation of the rights and freedoms of our citizens, of strengthening our political system, parliamentarism, and finally, that is providing security and sovereignty in economic and technological sphere. Well, I don't think that in responding to this question, I don't need to cover all of these matters, but I'm quite positive that the audience that we have here and the rest of the country is fully aware that Russia cannot exist without it. Financial, economic, and technological sovereignty is the future of any country, including Russia. So if we talk in concepts, these are the main dimensions. Let's turn to economy. Many in the world have been surprised that the Russian economy did not collapse under the burden of the so-called pressure, sanctions, pressure from our former so-called partners. But it's apparent that they have the goal to push Russia to the limit and to make it buckle. So what kind of resilience does the Russian economy have? It's resilient enough not to only feel quite confident, but to move forward. And this resilience, well, we've discussed it many times as well, but I'll repeat myself. That is ensured by several components. The first one, and the most important one, is the tremendous consolidation of the Russian society. The second thing is sustainability of financial and economic system of the country. It came as a surprise to our so-called partners, and honestly to many of us as well, that over the past decades, Russia has gained this resilience and sustainability in finance and economy. And the third component, naturally, is greater capacity of our forces, security forces and the army. And if we talk about the economic indicators, specific indicators, what can we be proud of? Well, as per usual, I brought a table over. There is nothing special that we don't know, but I think that yesterday, Finance Minister voiced several indicators yesterday. The main indicator is growth of GDP of our economy at the end of the year is expected at 3.5%. That is a good indicator. That means that we bounced back from the dip last year. I think we stood at 2.1%. If this year we gained 3.5%, that means we bounced back and made quite a significant step forward. Unfortunately, we have inflation growth. That is so, and we expect 7.5% at the end of the year, maybe even higher, reaching almost 8%. The central bank and the government are taking all the necessary measures, and we can discuss that later we can talk about the increase in interest rates and so on, other measures that the central bank and the government are undertaking, and we hope that we can go back to the targeted level of inflation. Industrial production is growing confidently, 3.6%, but what's especially makes us happy, manufacturing 7.5%. That is year-on-year growth. This is an unexpectedly high rate. And what makes us especially positive is 10% growth investment into main capital, fixed capital. That means that today we have apparent growth in GDP and industry, plus 10% in fixed capital investments. That means that midterm we have ensured our sustainable growth. There will be new jobs created, expansion of industry, and so on. As for unemployment, I'll speak about that later. The profit stands at 24% of the industry, let alone banks. They are going to earn almost 3 trillion rubles, even more. Of course, I know that in this audience and from around the country that, yes, the banks are doing fine. They're going through fat years. But those people who are storing their money in Russian banks, that's good news for them. The sustainability of the Russian banking and financial system. Now on to real wages. It's going to increase by about 8% year-on-year without inflation.
Well, this will not be a universal picture across the country, but more or less these are specific, precise statistics, and the real disposable incomes of our people will also be growing. There are more components therein, but it's going to be about 5% growth. The unemployment rates. Recently, we were proud of record low levels of 3% of unemployment, and yesterday, while getting ready for today's talk, we saw that it stood at 2.9%. We've never seen that low unemployment before. This is a very good integrated or aggregate parameter of the overall economic performance. When I spoke about the real disposable incomes rise, I must mention that starting from the 1st of January, we will increase the minimum wage by 18%, which is not something that we do frequently. The public debt has been shrinking, which also testifies to the macroeconomic and financial stability. The public debt slumped from 46 to 32 billion USD, and the private external debt also has dwindled. All our companies have been repaying on schedule. It went down from $337 billion to 297. So the repayment is on time, sometimes even ahead of schedule. Well, the aggregate social parameters also will talk a lot about social and welfare matters today, but there is a comprehensive parameter of the life expectancy growth. In 2021, the life expectancy in this country was 70.06. In 2022, 72 and 73.73. And in 2023, we expect the life expectancy at 74 years. So, which is an indicator showing that we are doing fine in terms of our welfare and social policies and economic policies. The other day, you awarded some of the heroes of Russia, and you said that the guys should be spared, but we should continue pressing for 2 years. We have been living amidst the special military operation, so we receive a spate of questions from everybody.